of this lesson, you should be able to explain the concept of electoral malpractice. You should be able to explain the concept of electoral malpractice. You should be able to discuss the causes of electoral malpractice and explain the consequence of electoral malpractice. So, what is electoral malpractice? Electoral malpractice, according to the slide you're seeing there, can be defined as those contrary principles, rules, behavior of manipulating the electoral system of a given country. It is also known as electoral fraud or voters fraud. It also means an election conducted in an atmosphere of harassment, intimidation, and other coercive means in order to bend the will of the majority according to a constitutional provision. Electoral malpractice are usually committed by the Electoral Commission, political candidates, or political parties. They do this by influencing and altering the results of elections in a dishonest way in order to get the results they desire. In this type of election vices are noticed. The will of the majority of voters aborted. Candidates who did not win election are imposed on the voters. So that is the meaning of electoral malpractice. Just as we have examination malpractice, electoral malpractice is also using fraud, using bad, evil means to win an election. Let's go to different forms of electoral malpractice. The first form of electoral malpractice is the use of fake ballot papers. Use of fake ballot papers. That is number one. When fake ballot papers are used for casting votes, this amounts to electoral malpractice. Such papers are used for multi-voting. That means you will see one person just sitting one place and be, thumb printing candidates and packing it there. So this leads to vote manipulation, making the wrong candidate to win the election at the expense of the right one that the people has elected. So use of fake ballot paper is one way in which uh, election is being faked. The second way is deliberate refusal to supply election materials to some areas at the appropriate time. Yes, or you can call it artificial scarcity of electoral materials. Electoral malpractice also involves deliberate denial of the electorates of voting materials such as ballot boxes, papers, etc. This is done to frustrate the people that will vote. And it is done in a targeted area, maybe an area they target that the opposition party will win. They will deliberately refuse to supply them election materials on time. By the time they will now get there, many people who came to vote might have left the venue. The next one is underage voting or voting by underage children. This is a situation where children below the approved age of voting are made to vote. This could be done in areas where the party has few legal voters and more youths under voting age. Yes, it's very common among the Northerners. You see small children being forced to go and vote. Even they start planning it during the time of registration of a voter's card. You see them going to get voter's card. When here, you in the south or west, you dare not do that if you are not up to 18. Let's look at number 4. The use of thugs to intimidate and harass voters during and after election. Yes, there are situations where thugs are hired by political parties to intimidate people by coming out with dangerous weapons like cutlass, arrows, and guns. This scares the people who want to vote away from performing their civic duties. So, using of thug and intimidation is also a form of electoral malpractice. Number 5 says financial inducement, which I call bribery and corruption too. Voters may be given money or other rewards to vote for a particular candidate. Though this may be against their choice, vote buying, as it's otherwise called, may be done indirectly when politicians bribe pastors, imams, to tell their followers to vote for a particular candidate. Even if they have reached the extent of bribing pastors to force their members to vote a particular candidate, that is what is called financial inducement. It's also a form of electoral malpractice. The next one is fake manifestos. Yes, you know that during election, contestants usually come out to tell the populace what they intend to do. So at times you find out that political parties may give fake manifestos just to woo voters to vote for them, telling them what they know they cannot do. At the end of the time, when you vote them in, you now find out that they can't even do one thing that they promised. That is also electoral malpractice. The next one says disenfranchisement. What does this mean? It means that electoral malpractice also can be in form of changing the information about the electorates. Like me now wanting to vote, they now change my information. And when they change my information, I will find it difficult and unqualified to vote because I will not see my voter's card. I will not see what I'm supposed to use in voting. So that's why one person can vote and the other one cannot vote. The next one is intimidation. Intimidation involves putting undue pressure on a voter or group of voters so that they can vote in a particular way or decide not to vote at all. This intimidation could be through threats of violence, legal threats, economic threats, and so on. So at times you see that voters are being intimidated to vote for a particular candidate. This is wrong. It's a form of electoral malpractice. The next one is misinformation, fake news. It's a situation where people distribute false and misleading information in order to affect the outcome of election. It could be in form of fake rumors made against a party or a candidate. They can be carrying rumor about a party they know is going to work. That see, those people have planned that they will make everybody Muslims, that they will make everybody this, that they will suffer everybody. You see people saying, I'm not going to vote. Can't you hear what people are saying? So fake news, we should beware when election is coming drawing near. Number 10 says ballot stuffing. As you can see that guy, there is no way in a normal election you will carry more than one ballot, one voting paper. But look at him trying to stuff plenty inside that box because he has stayed one place to manipulate the voting and he's now trying to stuff it inside that ballot box. And this occurs when electorates cast more than one vote expected. It simply means stuffing multiple ballot papers into ballot boxes in favor of a particular party or its candidate. It can also be in form of voting in many polling booths for the same party or its candidate. Furthermore, it can be in form of booth capturing, where a gang of thugs invade a polling booth, hijack the ballot box and papers and cast votes in the name of legitimate voters that have been scared away from the polling booth by thugs. So another way that election is being forged is through misrecording of votes. Look at that hand in that picture there. Someone is directing that hand to vote. Maybe the person with that hand is blind. So this normally happens to people who need assistance of others for voting. For instance, the blind or the illiterate electorates. Those assisting them may lead them to vote for a wrong candidate. That is electoral malpractice. The last but not the least, it should be is announcing results where no election was held. You find out that at times election will not happen in certain area. They will just stay one place and forge election result and announce it. So these are the different forms of electoral malpractice. The next subheading says causes of election malpractice. Causes of electoral malpractice. Let's look at what made people to involve themselves in electoral malpractice. The first one is crave for power. There is a saying that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. Many politicians engage in electoral malpractice because they want political power at all costs. Unfortunately, such people do not perform when they win the election, but they rather engage in looting the government treasury. So, crave for power is one of the causes of electoral malpractice. Let's look at another cause, which is poverty. Yes, poverty can make people to engage in electoral malpractice because it is easy for politicians to buy electorates with money or other materials such as food items, clothes, shoes, and so on. Many people will not mind selling their votes once their present needs are met. So poverty can make someone to engage in electoral malpractice. The next one is lack of political education. Many electorates are easily deceived by politicians because they are ignorant of their rights and responsibilities during election. Politicians play on ignorance of the electorates to manipulate the elections. So we need to know our rights so that we will vote very well. No doubt, government of today has introduced compulsorily the study of civic education in Nigerian curriculum. The essence is just for you to know your rights. The next one should be bribery and corruption. Some electoral officials do connive with politicians to manipulate elections. Once the politicians have bribed them with money, they tend to overlook whatever is happening to the ballot boxes and the ballot papers. They could also allow the politicians and their thugs to engage in multiple voting with election figures to favor a particular party. Another one is inadequate planning. And this means that if the electoral body does not prepare adequately for the elections, they will create opportunity for electoral malpractice. For instance, where government does not provide enough policemen at polling booths, thugs will have free days stuffing the ballot boxes with votes of their candidates. Another cause is late arrival of materials at voting center. Yes, this will cause late arrival of materials will cause lateness in voting. And if voting extends into the night, it will be easy for unpatriotic elements to perpetrate all kinds of electoral malpractice. The next one is influence of the ruling party. Influence of the ruling party in power. There are times when the party in power indirectly dictates to the electoral commission. They will tell them, my party must win. And those people in INEC, the leaders of the INEC, do not have any other option than to find a way to manipulate the results. There could be order from above. You know what we mean by order from above? To obtain results of election to favor the candidates of the party in power. It has happened sometimes in Nigeria here. Number 8 says lack of stiff punishment for offenders. Assuming there are stiff punishments for people who offend, others will learn from it. If the government does not give severe punishment to those engaging in electoral malpractice to act as a deterrent to others, these things will continue unchecked. And the perpetrators will be encouraged to continue since they know that there will be little or no punishment for them. So government should try, as we see the senators sitting, they should try and make rule, to bring out a stiff punishment for those who will offend. So the last one, these are the causes of electoral malpractice. The last one for today is cultural factor. Cultural factor. Electoral malpractice may be committed and the result of elections rigged in order to promote the influence of certain ethnic groups over others. So when you want, it has happened many times. You see Kano winning millions of votes. You'll be wondering, whenever you go to that side, you see landmass more than people. But when election is being conducted, you see a number that you keep on imagining. Maybe they are just doing it in order to favor those people there. So that is one of the causes of electoral malpractice. We have looked at them one by one: the cultural factor, lack of stiff punishment for offenders, influence of the ruling party in power, late arrival of materials at voting center, inadequate planning, bribery and corruption, lack of political education, poverty and crave for power. These are the causes of electoral malpractice. Remember, we also look at the forms, and we say one of the forms is announcing results where no election was held. We also looked at misrecording of votes in case of when you are directing a blind person or illiterate person. We also look at ballot stuffing. We also explain misinformation, intimidation, disenfranchisement, fake manifestos, financial inducement, the use of thugs to intimidate and harass voters during and after election, voting by underage children, deliberate refusal to supply election materials to some areas at the appropriate time, and use of fake ballot papers. We were also able to define electoral malpractice as those contrary principles, rules, behavior of manipulating the electoral system of a given country. We also say that it is also known as fraud or voters fraud. Now, for your assignment today, you have to write, list, and explain any three forms of electoral malpractice into your notebook. List and explain any three forms of electoral malpractice into your notebook. When next we meet, we'll look at consequences of electoral malpractice and how to prevent electoral malpractice. But until then, keep safe and remain blessed. Bye.